Guys, we are chewing on Mark chapter 10 today, and it is a super chunky chapter. It is a chapter where Jesus just kind of turns everything backwards, because that's what the kingdom of God is all about. It's about turning things upside down, and everything is backwards. Nothing makes sense, and that is the beauty of it. In Mark chapter 10, Jesus says, if you want to be rich, you need to give everything away and get poor. If you want to be first, you got to be last. If you want to be great, you need to be a servant. He turns everything backwards. And then my favorite part of this whole backwards thing is in verse number 13, and he says this. One day some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could touch and bless them, but the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. When Jesus saw what was happening, he was angry with his disciples. He said to them, "Let the children come to me. Don't stop them, for the kingdom of God belongs to those who are like these children. I tell you the truth, anyone who doesn't receive the kingdom of God like a child will not enter it." I love that. I like amusement parks, but one thing I really hate about amusement parks are the height requirements. When you go up to a ride and it says, you must be this tall in order to ride this ride. I mean, I'm an old fart, but there are still some roller coasters that I can't ride because I'm too short, because I don't meet the minimum height requirement, and it's kind of embarrassing. But this is heaven's height requirement, and it's all backwards. Jesus is saying, you want to enter the kingdom? That's great. You need to become like a kid. That doesn't mean that you are spoiled. That doesn't mean that you throw tantrums. That doesn't mean that you do weird kid things. That means that you accept the kingdom of God with childlike faith. Not childish faith, childlike faith. You accept it like a child and just take it in. It's a beautiful kind of backwards thing. I love it. And then as you read on in the chapter, it's great because the disciples are following Jesus. And in verse 32 it says this, the disciples were filled with awe, and the people following behind were overwhelmed with fear. Okay, there's a lesson there too. Because the closer you get to Jesus, the more fear becomes awe. Okay, if you're afraid, get closer to Jesus and turn that fear into wonder. Turn that fear into awe. Then at the end of the chapter, we run into the story of Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus is a blind beggar. He's sitting on the side of the road and he is begging. That is his way of life. That's what he's done for years. And he hears that Jesus is coming. And he starts screaming and he starts shouting and he's, Jesus, help me! And the crowd is trying to shut him down. The crowd is hushing him. The crowd, shut up, just be quiet. And they're afraid of offending Jesus. They're afraid of not being reserved. But Bartimaeus is displaying childlike faith because he wants something and he's not afraid to ask for it. And so he refuses to be shut down by the crowd. The crowd is trying to hush him. He refuses to get silent. He even gets louder and he starts shouting even louder. And finally, Jesus stops and Bartimaeus feels his way towards Jesus. And one real interesting, let me read this to you. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, he jumped up and he came to Jesus. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, his beggar robes, his old way of doing life, his old way of life. He cast it aside. He left it behind. He followed Jesus. And he gets to Jesus and Jesus says this, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. Isn't it a little obvious? But Jesus wants to hear him say it. And Bartimaeus, because it's that childlike faith. What do you want? Okay, tell me what you want. And Jesus, the Bartimaeus says this, "My rabbi," the blind man said, "I want to see." And Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has healed you." Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. Okay, he was healed, and he from that day forward followed Jesus. It's a beautiful story. It's a backwards kind of story. But God is all about backwards. He's all about first becoming last. He's all about adults becoming childlike. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Go out and be backwards today. God bless you. Giddy up.